Every so often, a story emerges that can captivate you with its unique presentation. A story that can pull you into a strange new world. A story that pays respects to things you love. A story that can create powerful emotional moments in 1 second, and then can make you laugh in the next. That's how Dandadan made me feel. It's a tale of an unlikely friendship turned romance, featuring spirits that want to eat your private parts, and space aliens that look like this. To call Dandadan a conventional rom-com, or even a conventional sci-fi, is a bit of a stretch. But what exactly is Dandadan? In case you haven't heard, it's a Shonen Jump manga that's gained massive attention thanks to its recent anime adaptation. At its heart, the story revolves around two main characters, Momo Ayase, a girl who believes in evil spirits known as yokai, and Okarun, a boy who believes in space aliens. We've all pondered the existence of supernatural spirits or life on distant planets. Maybe we've even argued about these things with our friends. Maybe we believe in both, or one and not the other. Well, that's the thing. Momo doesn't believe in aliens, and Okarun doesn't believe in ghosts. Their conflicting beliefs lead them to try to prove their supernatural fascinations to one another, only to discover that both are, in fact, very real. This sets the stage for a budding romance amidst a world filled with bizarre creatures. Before I dive into the narrative, I want to appreciate how Dandadan presents itself. The series pays homage to urban legends, classic science fiction movies, as well as folklore. The opening sequence of the anime adaptation beautifully echoes the intro to the classic Ultraman show from the 1960s, showcasing unique creatures and highlighting their distinct characteristics through the use of silhouettes and vibrant colors. The Serpoan aliens that attack Momo and Okarun in the first chapter even resemble something out of Ultraman. They even attack with a pose that's reminiscent of Ultraman's iconic Spatium Beam. This level of influence doesn't stop at just the Serpoans though. The catalog of creatures in Dandadan often draws inspiration from existing urban legends and popular culture. For instance, Turbo Granny has roots in Japanese folklore and is a rather popular urban legend. If you're an avid anime and manga enjoyer, you might even recognize seeing it in Mob Psycho 100. But what sets Dandadan apart is its ability to reimagine these creatures while respecting their origins. They seamlessly adapt these legends in a way that fits the tone of the series. The adaptation is never one-to-one. There's always some unique trait added, but never so much so that the origins are no longer recognizable. As someone who grew up watching kaiju movies and obsessing over books about monsters and urban legends, I appreciate how the series honors these influences without making fun of them. One standout example is one of the first enemies Momo and Okarun have to face, the Flatwoods Monster. For those unfamiliar, the Flatwoods Monster is a 1950s urban legend from West Virginia. In the legend, the creature is described as a beast with a pointed hood around its head and glowing eyes. It accompanied itself with a pungent mist that made witnesses nauseous, a terrifying creature. In Dandadan, it appears as a giant sumo wrestler. While this description may seem nothing like the Flatwoods Monster I just described, if we take a closer look, Dandadan's version of the legend retains all the distinct traits I just mentioned. Glowing eyes, a pointed hood, and even the ability to attack with mist. This makes it identifiable as a Flatwoods Monster before Okarun names it later in the encounter. This blend of respect and innovation is prevalent throughout nearly all of the monsters the characters have to face throughout the manga. But I don't want to spoil anything for those who might be only watching the anime, so I'll just leave it there. The stylization doesn't just stop at the monsters. It extends to the human characters as well. It's always been a pet peeve of mine when stories feature characters in the same attire throughout. It's not really indicative of how any world operates. It's not like people wear the exact same thing every day. So while it's never been something I use as a legitimate criticism, I'd be lying if I said it never bothered me. Dandadan takes this nitpick of mine and absolutely obliterates it. The story has a very keen sense of fashion. Both within the manga as well as many of the official artworks, the characters are always wearing something different. The outfits are full of vibrant colors and are just really pleasing to look at. They're both unique and practical in the sense that you could picture someone wearing these clothes in real life. Momo, in particular, is a character who is all about fashion. She is a self-proclaimed gyaru. Gyaru is a fashion subculture in Japan defined by rebellious and party-like characteristics, both in clothing as well as personality. Momo's style reflects this subculture, as she often wears vibrant colors, crop tops, and short skirts. Her personality and way of speaking is also indicative of gyaru culture. Momo is an incredibly outgoing, loud, and feisty individual, but she's also strong, loyal, and protective of those she cares about. Much like with the origins of the monsters, Dandadan pays a lot of respect to the fashion cultures its characters represent, treats everything it takes inspiration from with such reverence that even if fashion culture and giant monsters aren't really your thing, it's hard not to get charmed by its presentation of these ideas. At its core, Dandadan is built on the relationship between Momo and Ocarina. Despite the crazy battles and strange plot threads, what keeps viewers engaged is their really charming dynamic. The series wastes no time in establishing these two and their personalities. The story opens with Momo going through her first breakup when she spots Ocarina being bullied by some classmates. She instinctively stands up for him by sitting next to him until his classmates leave him alone. We immediately understand that Momo is someone who has a big heart in nature, despite the feisty and loud ways she'd been acting before. She's never even met this boy before, and doesn't particularly care for what he's doing, but the fact that he's being bullied compelled her to act in his defense. This characteristic is something that defines Momo throughout the story. Later, when she's describing why she believes in ghosts, Momo cites her grandmother as her primary reason, and that in her childhood, she often denounced the silly rituals her grandmother made her do. But when someone she liked made fun of her ritual and her grandmother, she was deeply affected by it. While as a kid, she didn't like or understand these practices and openly voiced her negative views on them, she still had a deep love and respect for her family, which is what she taps into to ultimately awaken her powers. Her heart is literally and figuratively her weapon. Anyways, the brief encounter they have deeply affects Ocarina and convinces him to chase Momo down and ramble about his love for space, which he assumes is the only reason someone like her would show any interest in him. Momo, still a little vexed from her breakup, shuts him down by telling him his rambling is why he doesn't have any friends. She immediately regrets this and apologizes. Momo tries to find some common ground between them, which is when she reveals her belief in ghosts. Only for Ocarina to mock her about it, which starts up an argument between the two of them. This is a great way to establish both of our characters as well as their chemistry, which is at the forefront of this series. From this scene, our understanding that Momo is a loud and spunky girl who has a heart of gold beneath her rough exterior is enforced. The moment she realizes she hurt Ocarina's feelings, she apologizes and tries to make things right. She's socially aware and is able to pick up on his change in demeanor. We also understand that Ocarina is a passionate but insecure boy who, despite his social awkwardness, isn't afraid to be blunt once he gets comfortable around someone. Their outward personalities lead to their entertaining arguments, but it's their inner selves that allow genuine moments between them to happen. What makes their chemistry so great, even as early as their first conversation, is that it never feels like they're tipping too far in the direction of comedic opposition or heartfelt moments. There's a clear balance between the two that keeps their future interactions engaging rather than tropey or overdone. Ultimately, their dispute leads to a contest to prove whose belief is real. Ocarina is sent to a tunnel and comes face to face with Turbo Granny, while Momo is sent to an abandoned hospital and is abducted by the Serpoan aliens. In a pivotal moment, Ocarina, cursed and out of control due to Turbo Granny possessing him, finds himself defending Momo from the Serpoans. He reveals that his belief in aliens stems from his feelings of rejection by humans. His inability to socialize and make friends made him seek out other life forms in hopes that he could confide in them. But when even they want nothing to do with him, Ocarina finds himself desperate to defend Momo, who at this point in his life is the only person, human or alien, who has ever treated him as a person and accepted him for who he was. It's a really powerful moment that makes us understand Ocarina's motivations. It makes sense that this lonely, social outcast would be desperate to protect basically the only person who's ever even tried to be around him. Ocarina's existence had been validated by this person, and the void of loneliness that he had felt his entire life had finally been filled, if only for a moment. Even if the acknowledgement was only slight and brought about by some instinctive kindness on Momo's part, it meant everything to Ocarina, and that's why he felt so passionately. His willingness to give himself up for those he cares about, particularly Momo, will be something that characterizes him as the story continues. It's one of Ocarina's most admirable qualities in my opinion, and much like with Momo, it becomes clear that at his core, he's a person who wants to do the right thing for his friends. But because of his social awkwardness and lack of real human connection, he's still figuring out what it means to be someone's friend. However, despite his determination, Ocarina is unable to fight. When all hope seems lost, Momo awakens her latent psychic abilities and is able to turn the tides of the encounter. The aftermath features a very humorous moment where Ocarina recites a line from the famous actor Ken Takakura. The same Ken Takakura that Momo has spent the entire chapter fawning over. When Momo asks for Okarun's name as a means to distract her racing heart, coincidentally and hilariously, his name is none other than Ken Takakura. This marks the beginning of their deeper relationship, and the story continues to explore new threats as well as the evolution of their young love. There's a lot to unpack and appreciate about Momo and Okarun's relationship in just the first chapter of the manga. One of my favorite things about their dynamic is that these are two people who may not have even met, let alone become friends, if it wasn't for Momo's instinctive actions. Her act of giving Okarun a chance to open up about his interests, even if it was originally done somewhat reluctantly, resulted in a relationship closer than either of them could ever have imagined. One of the core themes of this series is one of giving others a chance. It's a theme that applies to many of its characters, a cast full of people who have made mistakes, social outcasts, or people who seem standoffish but are actually harboring a deep burden within themselves. The main relationship of the series being formed on one of an instinctive act of kindness and giving someone a chance is very heartwarming and is in line with the series' themes. The point I'm trying to get across is that Momo and Okarun are the beating heart of Dandadan. The energy that they have in the first chapter of the manga is carried throughout the entire story. Not only are they entertaining together, it's also just incredibly easy to root for these two. Despite their flaws, they're good people who change each other as well as those around them for the better. Momo finds someone who treats her with respect and dignity, and Okarun is able to defeat his insecurities and finally have the companions he never thought he'd have. It doesn't just stop with Momo and Okarun. Seiko, Aira, Gigi, and the rest of the supporting cast are characters that are just as lovable and charming as its leads. They all have their own unique qualities to distinguish them from each other. And while overcoming the supernatural threats is an important conflict, Dandadan doesn't ignore the personal battles that each of these characters also has to face. As a matter of fact, I don't think Dandadan would be nearly as special without it. The last thing about Dandadan I want to discuss is its sense of humor. The series' bizarre humor is one of its most defining traits. Some jokes are a little more straightforward with setup and payoff. I already mentioned the bit about Momo's massive crush on Ken Takakura and how Okarun just so happens to share the same name. Okarun is actually a nickname Momo gives him to save herself some embarrassment every time she has to say his name. But the series also plays with tone. A serious and emotionally tense moment, like when Momo apologizes to Okarun for telling him he has no friends, or when Okarun is burning with determination to protect his new friend, are immediately flipped on their head with a joke. But despite this, it feels natural and in character. After Momo apologizes and confesses her belief of ghosts, Okarun is pretty quick to poke fun at her and start an over-the-top argument about how ghosts aren't real. Okarun makes a passionate speech about his willingness to fight, and he gives up almost immediately after getting hit with one attack. It can be difficult to shift tones and hop from an emotional beat to a comedic moment without seeming forced or not letting the moment breathe. Tackling shifting tones is something a lot of pieces of media tend to struggle with. But Dandadan does it in a way that fits the vibe the series has already set for itself, and more importantly, it fits its characters. Okarun and Momo are both shown to be characters who act and say things based on their instincts, so when a lot of the jokes are often born from them saying or doing things intrusively, it's fitting and not forced. Of all the types of comedy, however, Dandadan leads into absurdism more than any other, mainly through the situations it puts its characters in and plot threads that move the story along. I've been moving around this bush, but the key goal of Dandadan is the quest to get Okarun's balls back. And I mean that in a way as literal as you want to imagine. As a matter of fact, for some reason, a lot of enemies want Okarun's banana. The series takes this idea and runs with it for what is most of the manga. Nearly every major plot point is something that I could describe, and if you didn't know, you probably couldn't tell if I was lying or not. Dandadan basks in its ability to put these quirky characters in as many absurd situations as possible. And it works in a weird way that is both funny but also incredibly engaging. It sounds silly to say I'm invested in the quest for Okarun to get his private parts back, but it is incredibly engaging while also being hilarious. I could also delve into the battles, stunning artwork, the excellent supporting cast, and some of the deeper and more intricate themes that become apparent as you continue into the manga. But Dandadan is something that I really think you should experience for yourself. It's wonderfully original and features characters that are impossible not to love. If the buzz surrounding the anime hasn't convinced you, I hope this video might have. This series is truly deserving of all the attention it's getting. So if you can find it in yourself to turn off the kaiju movies and put down the book about urban legends, I'd highly recommend picking up Dandadan. It's something really special. For those who stuck around this far, thank you for watching my first video. I love discussing manga and have plenty of other series to talk about, so consider sticking around if that interests you. This definitely won't be the last time I talk about Dandadan. It's relatively new, so I wanted to hold off on any deeper, more intricate analysis of parts that come in later in the manga. Until next time, thank you.